Now, to understand conventions for depreciating assets for tax purposes, you have to kind of think back how we looked at depreciation for book purposes. In that scenario, we determined the asset, the date that an asset was placed in service, and we figured out on a straight line basis how much depreciation applied from that date forward through the end of the year. For tax purposes, we simplify it a lot more. We use this convention called a half-year convention. And that convention basically says that no matter when we buy an asset during the year, we treat it as having been purchased in the middle of the year. So whenever you buy an asset for a personal property asset, for tax purposes, you get a half year's worth of depreciation in that first year. Now, companies started to take advantage of that, and they would buy assets. You can read this in this paragraph here. The companies started to buy assets late in the year to take advantage of that provision and get a half year's worth of depreciation on assets that they didn't own very long. So Congress had to come up with this mid-quarter convention that basically gets rid of that behavior, because under the mid-quarter convention, companies are required to calculate depreciation as if they bought that asset in the middle of the actual quarter that they did buy the asset. So, for instance, if you bought an asset on, April 8th, April 8th is in the second quarter. So you would treat that asset as having been purchased on May 15th, and you would take, 7.5 months of depreciation on that asset. Also, if you bought an asset in December, which was the abuse under the half-year convention, you would treat it as having been purchased on November 15th. So you'd only get a month and a half of depreciation, and this would mitigate the abuse of the half-year convention. Now, the way the mid-quarter convention is applied is it looks at, it looks at how much assets you bought in the fourth quarter. So it's going to apply when a company bought more than 40% of its total assets for the year, total tangible personal assets in the fourth quarter. So what you do is you look at the scenario, like in this example here, they bought these three assets, these were the dates acquired, this is the quarter, none of it was bought in the fourth quarter. So in doing the calculation to see what was purchased in the fourth quarter, there was nothing purchased in the fourth quarter, so that's 0%. Okay, I think alternatively in this next example, they look at the same scenario but change the facts a little bit, and they say these are the dates that these assets were acquired, and you can see that $260,000 of the total was purchased in the fourth quarter. That's way more than 40%. So in this scenario, the mid-quarter convention would apply, and once it applies to all of your assets. Okay, so you don't just apply mid-quarter on the fourth quarter assets, you apply it to all the assets. It's all or nothing calculation, and a company does it every single year. All right, so it determines the method asset by asset every single year. All right. In terms of applying the half-year convention, you have these tables, and the one's reproduced here at Exhibit 9-7, but you'll see all of them in the back of the chapter in your book. Essentially, you've got 5-year property and 7-year property, and these are percentages of the basis of the asset that gets depreciated every single year. So if you have a 5-year piece of property, in year 1 you'll depreciate 20% of that basis. In year 2, 32%. These numbers add up to 100%. 7-year property, same thing. Okay, you'll notice that as time goes by, the higher depreciation percentages in the early years of the life, and it decreases until eventually a straight line would be greater than the accelerated method. So then it switches to straight line at that point. You'll see some examples down here. This example 9.5 shows how you'd compute depreciation on these three assets using the half-year convention. These are the rates that came from that table above, and this is depreciation for the year. I'm going to continue on the next video.